West by Salinas, Monterey, Homelessness. Bring back the Zoom, please. There's, it's shelter in place. Everyone has to wear a mask. That's another reason not to even use sweeps, because the shelter in place, that's CDC guidelines. Point in time just went by, and I hear there's going to be more sweeps again. The navigation center is COVID positive, Victory Mission is COVID positive, Sheriff Center is COVID positive. So last year, the big thrust was, if they don't go in services, then that's why we steal your stuff. What is your excuse going to be this time? Can we just please not attack people? Is that a possibility? I mean, we love doing this math. Look at all the money that's going toward the sweeps could actually go toward housing. This is a simple policy. It's actually free. You don't have to spend money that way. But, we can't work on the health and safety issues. We can mitigate those. We just need to give people an address, a place to be 24 hours a day. That we say, all right, you're signing for cars. Your place is not a sty, it's not like a trash. We're going to pass you over. We'll let you be. Because we said we would help you. Now, where is that real help? How's that really going to materialize? Because law enforcement cannot be a solution. Just kicking people out, stealing what they have, creates criminals. I mean, how are they going to get it again? They need it. They still need food, clothing, shelter. We're willing to give food and we're willing to give clothing. But the shelter piece, that's, and it's obvious. We know what we could do, but we don't want to. And that's really the thrust, and the change needs to go toward people, not business, not profit, not our property values. We need to sell this up, and it comes from within. And if we can't do that, and we're only worried about the math of downtown and our businesses and property values rising, we've lost the point of being human from the start to the finish. So please stop the sweeps, make sure they don't happen, and bring Zoom back, man, because this is dangerous. What you're doing is actually creating a health hazard by doing it.
Hi, my name's Jeannie Shield, and I live in the Creek Bridge area. I wasn't going to talk today, but I thought, okay, I'm here, I might as well. Creek Bridge, homeless encampments are growing. It's crazy. It's crazy. Believe it or not, I'm not worried too much about the garbage and the feces and all the stuff that come with it. I'm more worried about the people and the sweeps. You're going to sweep them up. I know everything. Excuse me. I know everything needs to be clean. It's a health hazard, but they're just going to move somewhere else. We've got them now on the other side of Creek Ridge on Veranda. And I really am worried about these people and where they're going to go, what they're going to do. And I hope that there's a plan and you guys will be transparent and let us know what's going on, because there's a lot of stuff that's being said in my neighborhood about, it's all hearsay. It's like, they say that the cops won't do anything. The cops have been told not to come out when there's a homeless situation. There's all kinds of rumors. I'd like to know what's real, what's going on within this shelter. We have a brand new shelter, which costs how much? $50 million or something? What's happening with that? Why are the people still on the street? That's it.
Which is an administrative report on Bay Area Community Services, BACS, an update on our Sheriff Center operations. And we have Megan Hunter, Community Development Director, and Yovan Iglesias.
Thank you, Honorable members of the Council, Mayor. I wanted to just give a little bit of background before Bay Area Community Services, known as BACS, makes a presentation. The city has been extremely busy as it relates to shelter and emergency beds. In the last approximately a year, we went from 70 emergency beds, we're now up to 180. And that is in part because of the Sheriff Center. As some of you may recall, before the Sheriff Center came online, we had a warming shelter that operated initially just during the cold months. It was extended year-round, but it closed actually during the day. And so folks would have to leave and come back at about 4:00 p.m. Now we have a brand new, beautiful Sheriff Center. It costs roughly about $8 million to develop, and there is capacity for 100 individuals, and BACS will give you more information, but it's been at capacity since it opened. So, and they've been doing a tremendous amount of work. I also just want to mention that this was possible because of a strong city and county collaboration. Sometimes folks ask, what is the county doing about homelessness? But in this particular case, the city and county came together with a vision to create this year-round shelter with with bathrooms and a commercial kitchen, and to take pets, because not allowing for pets was a barrier. And we executed it together. We worked together to apply for the funding, the grant funding that enabled the construction of the center. And now we work hand in hand with the Department of Social Services to basically coordinate with Bay Area Community Services to make sure that the promises that were made to the community in terms of the services continue to be met. So I just wanted to give the county a shout out for the great partnership we had, especially the Department of Social Services, who we really feel we work really hand in glove with. And with that, I wanted to introduce Javon Iglesias. We've had an amazing partnership with BACS since they started not too long ago. It's been a little bit over 6 months. They opened at the very end of May. They have just a pleasant, surprising attitude of, why not? Sure, we'll do it. And they have the mission of whatever it takes. And I've certainly found that to be true in working with them. So with that, I'd like to introduce Javon to make the presentation. Thank you.
Greetings, council members, honorable mayor. First, would like to just thank again our city partners, our partnership with the coalition, as well as our county partners as well. These past 6-7 months, we have rarely had such a welcoming partnership from the onset, and it's been a privilege to work with you all, and we're looking forward to the work ahead. I'd also like to introduce my colleague, our program manager at the Share Center, Nicole Sakihara, who will also be joining me in the presentation today. I'm Javon Iglesias. I'm the Chief of Program Operations at Bay Area Community Services, and I've been with the organization for about 8 years. I'm going to walk you through a little bit about the agency and the Share Center. We'll get into some of our general operations, the connections that we've made, the community supports and linkages that we've had the opportunity to be a part of, and then we'll leave some time for some questions at the end. So Bay Area Community Services has been around for almost 70 years. We started as a very community-minded and community-centric organization that believed in creating hubs of both community support through housing and social and behavioral health services. And we've since expanded in these nearly 70 years to serve over 100,000 people across the Bay Area and now in the Salinas community. We are an organization who has a vision where the world is a safer and healthier place for members of the community to engage in. And as before mentioned by Megan, our mission is simple and succinct. We seek to uplift underserved individuals and their families by doing whatever it takes. It's a succinct mission, however complicated the ideology behind it. Whatever it takes means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And we strive to be the organization that says yes. Yes, we're going to give it a try. Yes, we're going to look to remove barriers and make housing an opportunity for everyone. So this is a little bit about our history. Our founders were a little bit ahead of their time in terms of creating these community hubs, and as we've grown in size and expertise, we look forward to bringing that down to the Salinas community. We have done that over the past 6-7 months. As Megan mentioned, we opened the doors at the Share Center in July of last year. We came down in May and started setting up the site, and it's a beautiful site. If you haven't attended, definitely enjoy having any of you come by, and we are happy to show the site and the services that we do there. As of the end of January, we had 100 individuals on site, 32 men, 21 women, and 47 families. So it is a full house at the Share Center, and we're proud to keep that census full and keeping people in as quickly as we can get them in. We also have a pet census, which is we're so proud to be able to operate a facility that keeps in mind the orientation of pets as part of our families and removes that barrier towards people getting into the shelter and into supportive housing programs. We have 14 dogs, we have one very precocious cat, and we even have a snake at the Share Center. Staff, we are adequately staffed at 20 personnel. They include residential counselors who are on site 24/7 through 3 different shifts throughout the day, and their function is to facilitate the support of the milieu, including all of our residents. They do rounds, they check on folks, they engage with folks throughout the day and evening and make sure that they have what they need, resolve conflicts, and generally support the function of the center, which Nicole will get into in a little bit. We have a housing locator. This person's function is to be out there in the community and to secure our pool of landlords and vendors who are willing to rent to our folks and help facilitate that process so that our care coordinators can then work with individuals and families to increase their income, to increase supports, to increase linkages that eventually land them into those permanent housing placements. We have a property supervisor who supports Nicole in the facility and the operation of the site, maintenance of the site, and working and coordinating with our city and county partners to make sure that we have what we need in order to have a welcoming and comfortable environment. We have an employment coordinator on site as well. The employment coordinator's function is to help our individuals and families find gainful and competitive employment so that they can obtain housing and sustain housing for the long run. And then lastly, we have our program manager. What do you do there? Nothing. Nicole is very highly engaged in the everyday operations of the Share Center. She engages with our residents, she engages with our staff. She's a constant and consummate problem solver, engaging with both our city and county partners, and it's just a pleasure to have her there. Currently, we have an extensive list of people who are looking to get into the center. The list is approximately 200 people deep, and again, we look to bring people in as soon as we are moving folks out, and that list is moving. Again, Nicole will give some more information about that in just a minute. And here you go.
So far, I'm super happy to report I have an amazing team, and they're really dedicated, and they've really adopted the whatever it takes philosophy. And so far, we have placed 22 individuals in permanent housing, specifically permanent housing, not necessarily transitional. This is where people can stay for as long as they would like. That includes 6 individual men, 5 individual women, and 3 families. And it's a mix of size of families. We have currently had 23 employment placements. Our employment rate is 64%. Our employment coordinator is a beast, if I may say so. He's been able to connect with really big places like Organic Girl, Select Staffing. Motel 6 has even agreed to work with us and help place some of our folks as well. So we're really excited about that, and he continues to build those relationships, and he is looking to continue to build those relationships in the community. Projected housing placements, we do have landlords that our housing locator was able to secure with multiple units, so we are expecting 23 individuals to move out in the month of February. In terms of community support and other connections, this is not even a comprehensive list of everybody that has come out to support the Share Center already. Victory Mission has been critical and been with us from day one to help provide meals. They've now moved their whole operation to the share center, and they're able to use that industrial kitchen to continue to produce the meals for the multitude of programs that they do here in Monterey County. We are also working with the Birchbark Foundation, Peace of Mind Dog Rescue, and SPCA Monterey County to help provide any support that any of our pet parents will need and any sort of costs that may arise with that. We are working with SPCA to bring kennel training, behavior training. They've also agreed to help us set aside time at the clinic so that any animals that come in who need spay or neuter services, need vaccinations, they're going to get on the schedule and they're going to get on quickly. We are working with the Monterey County Office of Education. Dr. Donna Smith was critical and amazing, and she secured a grant to help bring a tutor to the center, specifically for the center. So he's there 5 days a week. He comes in at 5 o'clock. He works with anybody that wants any sort of help, really. He's also adopted that whatever it takes philosophy. Sometimes it's playing soccer with the kids. Sometimes it's teaching English to some of the adults. But he's been really awesome and really great at introducing himself to all the folks at the center and making himself available. As noted earlier, Comcast, General Motors, the American Beverage Association were critical in getting us Christmas at the center, where we were able to have 2 Santas, one from the north, one from the south, and a fire truck come by, and it was amazing. The kids were so excited. As soon as they saw the fire truck, it was like, yeah! We've got Cheesecake Dreamations, who is donating to us, Chick-fil-A, who donates to us any sort of extra food that they have, they are willing to give to us. So that could even be frozen chicken patties. So we'll get some of those and we're able to have them out. First Presbyterian Church constantly brings by sandwiches for folks so that during the day, in between lunch and dinner, they have something else to eat. The Hawaiian Women's Group has also been very amazing to us. They've donated a lot of things for Halloween, for Thanksgiving, even for Christmas. They got each and every child a gift, and actually it was many gifts, so we were very grateful to them as well. Any questions?
Yeah, we're open to take some questions at this time if the council and the mayor has them. I just wanted to note that when BACS was awarded the contract, in which we were so honored to take on and be a part of the, invited to be a part of the Salinas community, one of the concerns that came up was, are we going to bring down all of our Bay Area folks and take over Salinas? And we're really proud, and I think this picture really demonstrates it, is that every single person who works at the Share Center is from this community. They are here, they care, they are impacted by what we do just as much as anyone else who lives here, and we're super proud of that, and it's such a pleasure to work with all of them and be a part of this community. So we're open to take any questions that the council or the mayor may have.
Excellent, thank you, I appreciate it. We'll go to council for questions, then we'll go out to the general public, and then we'll come back to council for final comment. I will start to my left. Councilmember McShane, questions?
Nicole, great to meet you or see you. I know we've talked on the phone, and I want to thank you for your responsiveness with client questions and referrals, and just want to thank the team for the work that's been done. I guess there was one question that was brought to me by a constituent that saw this and asked yesterday for me to ask it, and that is, just to confirm that there's a day center, and there's no controls on who comes in and who leaves, while there is controls on those that spend the night. Is that correct? Like, you don't need a badge to walk in the door, so to speak.
No, but we do check people in when they do come in. I think you can speak specifically to the process.
Yeah, that'd be helpful, just so that I better understand
Yeah.
day use and, say, more comprehensive evening use. If you could speak to that, that'd be helpful.
Sure. So we don't necessarily operate like a day center would, and that is to protect the privacy of some of our residents that are currently at the center. But anybody is allowed to walk in. People can self-refer, and so as soon as you walk in, you're greeted by someone from staff. If they don't already recognize you as a partner at the center, and you can talk to them about what your need is, and what we try to do is we'll put them in the referral system, and we'll also check other shelters and things, or we'll give them other resources. The Coalition's Guide is really critical for that. So we're able to hand them something that like has very specifically where you can get a meal, where you can get a shower, where you can go for other shelter to try and see if they have space currently right now in this moment. And then if they're hungry, we do offer them some food, but typically we don't let folks hang out at the center if they are not a current partner.
Okay, so you can get a hot meal, some referrals, a short stay, but not, a long stay.
Correct.
Okay, did you guys ever end up picking up RVs in the back? I know there were 4 hookups installed.
There are 3 RVs for families.
And are they being
Yeah, they have a temporary gate around them right now with a direct access into the center. And we're working with our city and county partners right now to have a more secure permanent fence around that so that it is literally a part of the facility.
Yeah, okay, but these aren't private RVs, these are the ones that...
They're not private RVs,
By
they
the
are.
city, okay. And when you say 47 families, how do you define a family?
I define a family that can either be a couple or one person with a child, two people with a child.
Okay, yeah, because the count on that, I don't know which slide that was, the count showed 47 families, and when I looked at the total, it seemed like maybe the number of family members were not taken into consideration. If you could get there.
Yes, so that is 47 family members total.
Oh, got it,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
that's helpful.
Not 47 families.
Yeah.
Got it, okay, that's
You can see how that's confusing.
All right. And then I guess the other question I had is, how's the neighborhood? I'm sure I'll hear from my colleague to the northeast, but boy, I mean, even in my district, and I'm not even in North Salinas, it just seems like the concerns from the constituents that came to the podium today, like the neighborhood's definitely been impacted by the center. So, I mean, I guess that's to be expected, but, maybe you could just comment on two on your observations of the neighborhood and what either the city or BACS is doing to be a good neighbor, to make the rounds, introduce yourself, pass out business cards, keep in close contact with the city.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a joint effort for sure. As an organization, we pride ourselves on being responsive to the needs of our neighbors as best we can. Where it involves specific individuals, we are also very conscious to observe privacy and confidentiality, and then at the same time working with those individuals if they are members of our community at the Share Center and addressing that individually with them. And then there's the larger approach, which is to then of course get to know our neighbors, understand what their concerns are, and do our best to be attentive to them.
How's that going?
Megan, you had something you wanted to
Well, I mean, how's that going in getting to know, sure, just give me a second, yeah,
Sure,
how's
sure.
it going in getting to know the neighbors?
Nicole, you've had a tremendous effort in that part.
When you mean neighbors, are you talking about
Oh, I don't know,
organizations?
the businesses in the Safeway Shopping Center, folks that have housing that may back up nearby, the folks that keep up the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, this sort of stuff.
To be honest, we've had amazing community support. We've been able to reach out on Facebook to get folks bikes, to get them bus passes. I have not had anybody come up to the center and try to engage me in some sort of ill-mannered anything about getting people out of here, or why are you at this,
Okay, so
why
no
are you here,
complaints.
nothing like that.
Yeah. But we have, with regards to the memorial, we have had concerns come up about whether it's participants that we're working with or people of concern, and we look to address those as quickly as we can, but at the same time holding confidentiality and privacy. So in some regards, it's always a needle that we have to thread in terms of both holding confidentiality and privacy and then being attentive to what our neighbors are looking for, but it's not something that we're unaccustomed to in this work, and we try to do it with responsivity and keeping the relationship intact as much as possible.
Yeah, it's refreshing to better understand the day use or services provided, because I think that was one concern communicated to me, that could create more of a magnet that would have a larger impact. And I guess this is my last question there. So have you found that the center has attracted more encampments or more homeless in the area or activity? Maybe that's a public safety question. Maybe it's a question for Megan.
Yeah, I think I can answer that because we have our street outreach teams going on there. So I don't think there's been any difference between the center being open versus how it was before the center was open. The thing that has been, I think, of a challenge is kind of more recently, there was a lot of effort on Caltrans to clean up the areas, and that shifted a lot of population in different areas. More recently, I think there's been more people in the Creek Bridge area. We did apply for an encampment grant, which hopefully we'll know on March 1st. That is actually specifically to focus on the encampments around Creek Bridge and Carr Lake area. So if we get that, they can be more focused attention. But in what we've seen, the data has shown that there really hasn't been a tractor. And the vision was not to be a day center.
Yeah, I remember.
The vision was to operate 24 hours so people within the community that are staying at Share have a place to stay, so they're not kind of like the warming shelter pushed out and roaming. And the one thing I did want to point out is this is a navigation center, so it's a temporary, we're trying to keep people only there for 90 days to get that permanent housing, and that's why I think seeing some of these statistics of permanent placements will open more spaces and help us kind of help people get to that next stage in their lives.
What's an encampment grant, Megan? If you could is that for cleanups or is that for navigation, street outing?
It's actually all of it. It's understanding that, cleanups are good, but you're cleaning up the problem, you're not really solving the problem. So it's an encampment resolution grant, so it's really about cleanup, outreach, and finding people a place to go.
Got it. Hey, thanks. Thanks for that's Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Rocha, questions?
Yes, I have several questions, but first I want to thank you for the work that you do and thank our staff and the council before me that had the will to be able to move forward despite some significant opposition and built the Sheriff Center. It's been a great success in my opinion, and I want to thank you for presenting. I'm going to ask quite a bit of questions from the specifics of the philosophy and some of the numbers.
Sure.
One of the things that stands out to me significantly is that the Sheriff Center is not a traditional shelter. It's defined as a housing first philosophy oriented shelter. And I think that's really important because for many, many years this country had a philosophy of a linear model which proved not to be successful. And so now we're moving towards a housing first model which is far more successful. Can you please define what the housing first model means and how it impacts the work you do?
Great, insightful question. I appreciate that question. If I may, I'd like to even take it a step further because there's a number of philosophies and models that we draw from to create how we operate the Sheriff Center. So housing first is one piece of that. We operate also with principles around rapid rehousing and interim housing models. And so very basically, what housing first espouses is that there is no such thing as housing readiness. If you want it, you deserve it, you get it. And you get it as quickly as possible. Because providing someone a meaningful place to stay and be at is so much more than just shelter. It reduces the harm that comes to people. It improves by having that as a hierarchy of need that is then taken care of. It improves mental health. It improves emotional well-being. It improves the ability sustain oneself, to secure other resources, and so on and so forth. You can really extrapolate from there. So that's the essential, the crux of what Housing First is. How that fits into what we do at the Share Center is by creating a model that really seeks to reduce barriers to entry, and that goes everything down to the paperwork, to the referral process, to getting to the quickness in which we are able to move people into the center once they are determined or to be eligible, and even reducing the eligibility requirements. All of that, you reduce those barriers to get people in and house them first and foremost, right? So that's one part of the way that the model works, and specifically around entry. And then immediately upon their entry into the program, we're beginning and we're espousing what a successful exit looks like, right? So we're not waiting for 3 months, 6 months down the road, a year down the road, so that people get stuck in this program, but rather that from the onset, we are working on a plan to get that person or those families housed immediately, right, or as soon as possible. And that is where that kind of dovetails into a rapid rehousing model. Our model also includes elements of what's called CTI, or what's called critical time intervention. And critical time intervention espouses a phased approach that
Can you give me even speaking to the mic?
Sure.
It's really important. I want to make sure.
Yeah, so CTI is called critical time intervention. It's a model, it's an established model across the country that espouses a phase-based approach that doses time and engagement with people and families during their stay in a particular program. And the final phase of that model is called Aftercare. And so the reason why this model is successful is because it includes engagement post-discharge from the site. And so that it ensures that people don't just get housed, but that they then receive continual supports on a titrated basis so that they stay housed. Because all of this is for naught if people just continue to recidivate back into houselessness, right? And so that aftercare can be continual check-ins, counseling, linkages to other supports, in addition to the well-endowed flexible funding and supportive services monies that we have as a part of this program to ensure rental titration or remove any barriers that would otherwise support people to get into housing. So I hope that answers your question.
That's a beautiful answer. Thank you. And I want to build off of that answer. You mentioned something that's low barrier shelters. I think that's really important. Can you go into detail why low barrier shelter is so important and the challenges that high barrier shelters pose and why this model is far more successful?
I will be as succinct as I can be while also being detailed. But the bottom line is in this work, particularly working with individuals and families that are houseless, the moment of impact is often the moment of choice, when that person decides that they want help. And if there are impediments to realize that choice, then that reality makes it more difficult to happen, right? And so if you have an individual or a family that says, I am ready to receive services right now, I'm ready to get off the street right now, and ready to get into a program or some sort of supports that is going to help me achieve my ultimate goal of housing. If there are multiple steps that are a part of that process, they introduce areas where that individual or those families can more easily give up or choose something else. And so the idea of removing barriers is so important because we want to access and help as many people as possible. And in order to do that, getting them through the door and saying yes immediately is one of the most beneficial strategies that you can do in this work. On the other side of that, if you introduce barriers, which could include more stringent criteria, screening processes, paperwork, eligibility screening, you name it, every one of those represents a barrier or a potential point of impact where that individual or those families say, forget it, I don't need it, I'm not going to do that, this is information that I'm not comfortable with providing, so on and so forth. And you find more and more people who then refuse those services or don't even bother to begin with. Accessibility is everything, and so this includes being able to speak in the language that the potential consumer is most comfortable in, being able to provide informational material in that language, or speaking to that culture. You name it, it has bearing on so many different levels of the work, and so that is part of not just the Share Center's philosophy, but our organizational philosophy is really to remove barriers to service, make it as easy as possible to get into the support.
Thank you for highlighting those. I have some additional questions, but I thought that was a really important distinction to make as we're having this public policy discussion. I want to build on that discussion. I think that oftentimes people make the incorrect assumption that all people experiencing homelessness have the same story and the same set of challenges. We know that there are various subsets of our community members that are struggling with housing insecurity. We have those that are chronically homeless, situationally homeless, and in some instances, first time people are experiencing with homelessness. And from there, you have additional subsets, families with children, unaccompanied youth, single adults, and yes, also unhoused residents struggling with mental health challenges and substance abuse challenges. As BACS is taking this new approach of housing first and low barriers, what is your strategy to provide differentiated models of service, individualized models of service for the different particular communities that have different needs, but the same overall need of housing, but different needs of how to get there?
I have to tell you, Councilmember, I'm really enjoying the thoughtfulness of your questions. So,
and then if you could reach into my whatever.
Sure. I'm not used to speaking with the mic.
I want everyone to hear you. You have fantastic things to say.
So I'm going to try and capture everything in your question. So I'll back up a little bit. BACS has a nearly 70-year history, and included in that history is an expertise that we've developed over decades around behavioral health and mental health services in particular, in addition to aging adult services, drop-in center, recuperative care services, all of that. I myself, even though I'm largely in operations and an executive administrator, am a licensed clinician. And so, as well as our strategy officer and our CEO herself, have all worked in both behavioral health with young people, with families, with elderly. And so we have a broad expertise in terms of the range of social services that our communities need and are looking for. So with that in mind, when we develop these models and produce them to, in this context, the Share Center, we keep in mind all of that together, not just houselessness and homelessness as a problem that we're seeking to solve, but all the integrative and holistic components of that make up each individual and each family's story. And that to end houselessness for an individual or a family means that you have to integrate these services, you have to integrate this ideology into the care of that individual. So it starts with an onboarding process that includes this philosophy of care from the onset and then ongoing training. We make sure to bring it into our staff meetings, into our ongoing supervision with staff. And as robust as this program is, there are constraints within it as well. And so with that, we do look to our partnership with our community members and other organizations, with our behavioral health brothers and sisters here in Salinas and in Monterey County, and look to create those linkages, those partnerships, and use a model that it's called Wraparound. And what Wraparound, for those of you who guys have heard that or are unaware of it, it is a model that espouses that at the center of any particular case is an individual who's influenced by a multitude of people who, in their life, as stakeholders in their well-being and stakeholders in their care. That can be an old soccer coach, that can be a pastor, that can be the person down the street who hands out bread to them at the local liquor shop or something like that. As long as that person has a vested interest or stake in that person's care, that person matters. And if there is a way that we can draw those folks into the service and treatment of that individual or those families, that is what we seek to do as best we can. And that's what we call the TDM, or a team decision-making, meaning the team is not the paid employees to do the work. The team is that person's set of individuals who care about them in the community. And so part of the work is about drawing those folks in and help sustaining them once they are then exited from the center, so that that is a part of their plan to stay housed and stay independent in the community. I kind of went over a lot of things.
I was going to just acknowledge you are one of the most passionate individuals I've ever encountered over housing and whatnot. I would just ask, in the interest of moving things along, that we ask succinct questions and give succinct answers. We still have 6 council members to get through.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
It's easy to talk about when you enjoy it.
And I appreciate that. I would just add the only reason why I'm asking these questions is because it's important to make serious distinctions and have honest public policy discussions. It's really easy to fall into the realm of pointing fingers and talking about the natural instinct of, well, how has this impacted this, without really fully understanding the scope of people's challenges and the socioeconomic struggles surrounding that. But thank you, Mayor, for the friendly reminder. I have 2 more questions. One more is going to be on the staff component. There's one, so usually when we're talking about shelters, there's a frequent position that gets posted, that's shelter monitor. In this staff census, I am not seeing the position of shelter monitor. Rather, I'm seeing care coordinator, employment coordinator, program manager. So can you talk to me a little bit succinctly, so the mayor won't pull the rubber neck, but
Yeah.
what is the care coordinator?
The most succinct way that I could put that is relationships. If you strip away all the work that we do, right? All the nomenclature, all the verbiage, all the technicality of these contracts, and so on and so forth, at the heart of it is, do we have the human resource and the training to create and maintain relationships that are necessary to motivate people into change, right? And so a residential coordinator, care coordinator, and employment coordinator, these are folks that specialize in specific areas of those relationships, but at the heart of it is, front and center, is those relationships that create with the people that we serve. And using that relationship as the vessel and the mechanism to change.
And the last question would be, what challenges are you facing and how can we help you in your mission of executing the Housing First model?
I again appreciate the question. I think we, as a community, it takes a lot of foresight and effort to continue to remove barriers and continue to ask that question. Not how do we screen people out, but really how do we get people in, and how do we broaden that circle? And it's a much easier said than done because it can pertain to so many different levels. And so yeah, that would be my challenge to this body.
Thank you for your helpful answers.
Councilwoman Cromie, questions?
Madam Mayor, I think my fellow council members have covered it.
All right, moving on, Councilwoman Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I would agree. It's clear to see your passion and the devotion that you have to serving this population of residents. So thank you, and I appreciate it. It's always nice to see someone who has this sincere care honored in practice way. So I thank you for that. I do have quite a few questions for you. So, I won't speak for my predecessor in District 1 or other iterations of what the council looked like. But we know that homelessness is a beast. It's a long-standing issue. The city has tried on its own to address it in some forms. The county's tried, and then there's been collective approaches. I think one of my biggest concerns when it comes to projects like this that require shared responsibility, collective leadership, is that there are communication silos that are created. So that your resident who calls and is saying, you know, I'm concerned about this safety issue in my neighborhood, or I'd like to talk to someone who actually works at the share center, don't know whether they should call someone in Monterey County Behavioral Health, whether they should call one of our police officers, whether they should call Megan Hunter, whether they should call Nicole. And I'm wondering, how can we help alleviate that confusion and really step up our public education measures as a council? Because in speaking to residents and having these meetings, it has been really disappointing to feel as though residents feel that not only is this, bless you, not only is this council sitting on this issue, even worse, we are ignoring it. I don't believe that to be true. I think that we've all approved funding, we've honored contracts, we've looked at more intentional and more humane approaches. So where is that work going? You know, I want to celebrate that work, and I want folks to know who to call, who to refer others to. Could you speak to how we can help clear up some of that misconception?
Yeah, I'm happy to share my input, and it sounds like Megan has some input too.
Megan's ready to go. Thank you.
I was going to say, actually, I think it would probably be more appropriate for Megan to answer the question.
Can I give just a 2-second response? So it is a big problem, council member, and it demands a lot of people and a lot of organizations. I think our standpoint is that there is no wrong door, and we look to engage in that philosophy with all of our partners. I don't live in the area, but if people need to call me in the middle of the night, I'm available for that. And I espouse, and I know our leadership espouses that as part of our overall philosophy. I'll leave it with that, but I appreciate the question.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I was going to mention that I don't think we've ever been as communicative or collaborative since I've been here as we are today in terms of our work. And I think Nicole mentioned it, but the coalition has an amazing resource guide that we use to give people information of places that they can call. But I think Jovan is right, there's like no wrong door because we're all working together. We meet with the Sheriff Center every week. We have a coordination meeting with the coalition. We're like, you know, hand in glove. I mean, Roxanne and I talk daily to each other. And we have this short team. So a lot of times you reach out to me and ask, like, can you follow up with this unsheltered person? And I refer to Keishla Lopez, who's an amazing resource. We are probably in the next month going to set up a hotline, a homeless hotline for the city. We haven't done that yet because we're kind of still trying to staff up. But as soon as we have something of that nature, we'll push it out and we'll have someone who would be available to respond to calls. I can't say that they'll be a live person all the time, but they will follow up.
Okay, thank you so much. It really is a great comfort to hear that, and I see the nods and the enthusiasm, and that makes me really happy because I attend these committee meetings and I hear from you all of these, Encampment Grants, and I'm going, this is what needs to be talked about. And so if I could add briefly, Mr. Kerrigan, when we first had conversations about a public information officer, much of what their role was going to encapsulate was disseminating this very kind of information. And it's been a real delight to see Sophie do exceptionally well in that role.
Councilmember Gonzalez, if you could maintain the questions on the topic that has been presented,
Oh, yes.
and ask with staff, either Megan Hunter or Yolanda, please.
I will to
Thank
Mr.
you.
Kerrigan. Thank you for the reminder. So as it relates to the Share Center, how can we make sure that our PIO officer is connecting with Megan, with folks in Monterey County, and also disseminating that information? Because that is what I'm having to do now as a council member, or relaying to Ernest, our council liaison, when I get these calls, I'm concerned about the share center, there's security issues going on, there's encampments popping up right outside the building, and I need folks to know who to call.
Sure, real briefly, we are here to talk about BACS. We'll also have the Leaving Home update, if I were planning homelessness next. And then on February 15th, we'll be back to talk about Health and Safety Days. Our new Public Information Officer, Community Relations Manager, Sophie Roman, has been deeply immersed in all of these conversations over the last couple of weeks. And I'm really looking forward to her presentation on the 15th. And I think she'll address all of these things, specifically what are we doing in February and March, but also how are we going to get the word out to the community.
Perfect, thank you. And then just one last question. On this, can we pull up the slide that has the organizational chart?
The staffing?
Yes, please.
You
So,
want to know what that's? I'm just kidding. Oh, sorry, I passed it. It's the third from the top.
yes. Well, as it's put up on the screen, there we go, okay, good. So, 20 staff members, 100 individuals. When I see titles, care coordinator, counselor, locator, supervisor, I, as someone who has some idea of this kind of service in this world of, human services, understand. But I'm curious if you could help illuminate for us and for the public, who is in charge of substance abuse support and wellness prevention? Is there someone that is in charge of, or is there a focus on COVID mitigation within the share center? Has that been addressed in any way, shape, or form?
I think if you asked Nicole about my stance on COVID, she would tell you that we've been pretty heavily involved from the beginning in terms of COVID mitigation strategies and policies. We do have a standing COVID-19 transmission mitigation policy for both the share center and for the agency at large. It addresses how we are managing transmission both amongst residents and amongst staff. And so it's a pretty comprehensive policy in that regard. With regards to PPE and social distancing and all of that, we've been very attentive to all of that. We have not had any issues with regards to obtaining PPE and making sure that it's available to both staff and residents. And again, we've worked really extremely well with our city and county partners to secure additional resources as needed. We've been creative in the use of our funding to isolate individuals who become positive over the time. And so to that end, I believe we've been as responsive as we can be, both as a program and as an organization. We do have an operations manager who has been at sort of the spearhead of our agency-wide COVID mitigation strategy and policy, and we have weekly report outs from an organizational standpoint about changes to our policy, updates to our policy and strategies and efforts, as well as data with regards to any surges that might be happening. And we're all in it, myself included. So we are very much aware of the health and safety of our staff and our residents with regards to COVID. With regards to the staffing around substance use and wellness and whatnot, again, as robust as the contract is, we put together a model that is really centered around our philosophy of care, which is really rooted in harm reduction and trauma-informed care. And we espouse that, as I said, in our training, in our daily meetings and whatnot. And then we look for linkage opportunities in the community. And I think part of the barrier that COVID has introduced is that the relationships that we would otherwise bring into the center, right, looking with partnerships outside and then bringing them in, well, COVID has presented a unique problem with that. And so I think as we get better at fighting COVID and mitigating that, and as things open up, our goal and our hope and our dream is to bring more and more of those resources in-house and regularly. We have a partnership that we're working on to bring in a veteran liaison, for example, and doing other partnerships like that so that we have on-site wellness activities and so on and so forth. So I hope that answers your question.
More than enough, I appreciate your candor, and it's good to see that these gaps and supports, if not now, will soon be addressed. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Guerrero, questions?
Giovanni, thank you very much for being here. There's no doubt we're going on the right way. You folks are doing some great work that's been needed for a long time. I just have one question on the waiting list, Giovanni. Hypothetically, if I'm on the waiting list, how do you get a hold of me when you have room for me, or how does that work?
Nicole, answer.
Yes. So during our referral process, or when someone is trying to come into the center, we ask a million questions. So first off, definitely if they have a phone number, if they have an email. If they don't even have an email, sometimes we can work with them to set one up, but making sure that they can find a place where they can access it, like a library. We also ask them if they're working with anyone else in the community, and to give us those phone numbers, or if there's an emergency contact that you know of. Heck, give me your friend's number so that I can hit him up when it's time for you to come in. And at the end, we also still just ask, like, where, at the end of the day, do you stay so that we can find you? Because we work with the Che outreach team, we work with the Salinas Valley Street outreach team, we work with the SORT team to let them know we're looking for this person, there's a spot open at the share. If you can find them and contact them and let them know that we are waiting for them and we are waiting for a response.
And to go down the same line, is it possible that maybe some of the people that are in tents around the shelter area, is it possible that they're on the waiting list? Or we wouldn't know?
Yes, yeah. I do know that, I know the ones very close to us right by the creek are on the waiting list.
They're on the waiting list. So some of them may be there because they're just waiting to get in. Good possibility. My other question, geographically, for pedestrians and all that, I mean, that's a fast road, low roll. And how do you see that working with the people that you service? You mentioned bus tickets, but as far as safety, what are the challenges there? Do you see any?
At the site itself?
People are going in and out of the center, trying to get there.
Getting to the site.
Yes, getting to the site.
If anything, the greatest challenge is that Google doesn't necessarily know where we're at, so they send people in the wrong direction. Otherwise, I noticed that even when I first started and when the shelter first started, the city of Salinas started building that sidewalk. And that was really, that's a really crucial piece of keeping that safety, because it now connects into the sidewalk that comes straight up. You just cross over to the center. For the most part, it's other county buildings and other county programs and things like that are next to us. So we haven't really had an issue with anyone like that.
Early on as well, we had some challenges around the postal address and the way that it was showing up with the postal service. So, we continue to have problems with Google, but otherwise, a lot of those are resolving themselves. Councilmember, I did want to address just one piece of that with regards to the encampment that's nearby. Just to be clear about this, folks that live in that encampment aren't necessarily staying there because they're waiting for a spot. It's not like there's a queue of folks who are camping out there for the specific reason of getting into the share center. We don't know the reasons why they've chosen that spot to settle, but it is not by design with regards to the share center that they are there. I just wanted to provide that clarification.
On safety issues, my last question here, whether you need the deputy sheriffs or you need the Salinas Police Department, how has the relationship been there as far as, maybe you haven't had to have a 911 call, I don't know.
For the most part, the police have been really supportive and responsive when we have had things. And the Salinas Fire as well, we've had a couple of issues where it smelled like gas. So they were really quick and really responsive to come out and help us out.
Thank you. Councilmember Sonia, questions?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, and thank you for being here. Really great presentation, great answers. It's really awesome to see the passion that you guys have for the work that you do. It's incredible. In your opinion, because obviously when you guys were starting out to find out the achievements or the success that you guys wanted to have here, how on track are you guys with that? I'm assuming that you guys have either maybe daily, weekly, or monthly meetings. Do you guys have like a goal that you guys set for your guys' selves on a weekly or monthly basis? And in your own opinion, how are you guys doing in your opinion?
In my opinion, we've started out pretty strong. Like, in terms of overall exits, and where's that slide? So 22 placements. Of these 22 folks moving into permanent housing, there's also additional folks that we've had to exit for other reasons that aren't what we would consider positive outcomes. As a whole, organizationally, we have pretty lofty goals in terms of what percentage of people who exit our programs exit into positive outcomes, which in this case is permanent housing. I believe that we are exceeding that expectation right now. I will say this. I've done enough of these in my career at BACS and elsewhere. I have a career that's over 20 years in this work. The arc of these types of programs in terms of their maturity and their outcomes, typically there's a strong arc in the beginning, and then the sharpness of that arc tends to kind of turn plateaus, so to speak, in terms of their outcomes. It's something to watch for, because there's a whole lot of things that cause that. Outreach, engagement, the continuance of reducing barriers to access, the market, the employment opportunities, all of those things. And we still maintain those lofty goals, and we'll be vigilant for that as well. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I just wanted, obviously, we canvassing the area, figuring out where we are as a city is the first thing that I'm sure you guys have done. And then after that, create a set of goals and that you guys would like to have. So just really, obviously, us looking at 22 individuals being housed 6 months, you guys being the experts at that, that's why I was asking, is that pretty?
Yeah, it's, again, I appreciate the detailed question. So if you look again at the arc of a program, and you look at the first 6 months as really ramp up time, we're exceeding where we should be right now, because really at 6 months is when we should start placing people. So if we're talking about a program that's between 30 and 120 days to 6 months in terms of you get into the program and then you get placed into permanent housing. Really, what we should be looking at is like at the beginning of January, you should have your very first people getting housed. We're way past that. We've housed 22 individuals. We have 23 on the docket. So I hope that gives perspective on that.
That's right on to what I was hoping to hear. And what about how is somebody selected to stay? Now, is it like a first come, first serve? How is somebody selected to stay?
Yes, so it's a mix of first come, first serve and just what's available, right? As we move people out, it's okay, is this a female room, is this a male room? Can I convert this female room now into a family room because I have greater family needs? But it is basically like, we do now have that wait list, and we go line by line. We give people at least 3 calls, 3 days of, so we'll call one day, call another day, call a third day, before we just move them to the bottom of the list. It's not about removing somebody. We just put them to the bottom so that if the time comes and their name comes up again, we can try again.
Additionally, what I would offer too is that we do some risk assessment at the very beginning too. So if we determine early on that this person may not benefit from the services of the milieu because there's a substantial risk to themselves or to other families or people, then we look to connect those people to appropriate linkages for what they need.
Great. And kind of going back on that same question, now, obviously, when you guys do like you guys' intake process, is it that it's determined in the beginning if more of the like psychosocial services would need to be, or I mean, is it more like kind of like this is kind of what that certain?
So it's an ongoing process. Some of that can be determined initially. Some of it doesn't become readily apparent until you start the work and you start to build a relationship or a pattern emerges. Many of the folks may have undiagnosed symptomology or unknown needs. Here's going back to Councilmember Roca's question about Housing First. One of the things about Housing First is that when you get someone into a home and they their other needs start to appear because the most basic need is already addressed, then other things start to appear. And so as a helping professional, our goal is to sort of monitor that and assess it ongoingly, and as those needs come up, and make the appropriate linkages to service or address them ourselves.
Okay. And so just to kind of reiterate as far as how somebody gets so it's not necessarily somebody needs to get a referral to be able to get on the list of this program. Can you just, again, really briefly just talk about that more specifically?
Yeah, sure. So we do partner with other organizations, so they do have our form already, and they can shoot it to us in an email. If someone calls over the phone, we'll do it with them right there over the phone.
Oh, wow.
If they would like, that we can email them the form, and they can email it back to us if they have that ability. Or yeah, just come on in, walk on in, and someone will definitely help you, and you can fill out the form right there.
It's really important to know. Thank you so much for your you guys' time. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have to be staying in the shelter in order to take advantage of the rapid rehousing program?
It starts that way. But again, part of the BACS philosophy, part of the whatever it takes approach is that there's a full acknowledgement that one size does not fit all. And so sometimes it includes looking at creative solutions. There have certainly been circumstances, both at the Share Center and other programs that we operate in different communities, where staying at the center is not working, but that doesn't mean that we end our services with that individual.
Understood. Thank you. I appreciate it. And then several nonprofits throughout the last several months of the Share Center being open have expressed an interest in volunteering out there or being, doing a meal for everyone once a week. What's the process, and how do you, is it just, it's a free-for-all, anyone who wants to volunteer can, or?
Give us a call.
Give you a call.
We do have a volunteer policy, procedure, and process. So there is a little bit of process around that, but it's not a big one, and certainly we welcome those opportunities.
Okay, great, thank you. With that, I will go ahead and close council questions and open up for public comment on this item. Any member of the public that wishes to comment on this item? Please step forward.
Hi, thank you. My name's Robert Roach. I'm a resident of Creek Ridge, and I previously emailed you some concerns about the homeless crime issue. I'm here to follow up on that and how it fits in with your environmental problem and your waste discharge permit. Here's how they define homelessness. It says homeless encampments are a potential source of human feces, trash, and other pollutants and impervious discharges. The encampments are going all the time along Constitution, along Gabland Creek, Upper Car Lake, all that watershed, all the time, more encampments. Here's what it says about general prohibitions. Discharge is causing or threatening to cause a condition of pollution, contamination, or nuisance as defined are prohibited. Discharges should not violate any applicable prohibition in the basin plan or in any other state water board policy, including specifically a trash discharge prohibition, which says you can't discharge trash. So I think you have an environmental problem there. this is allowed to continue, leave them allowed to continue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Robert Roach, Creek Ridge resident. I walked down that path from Safeway to New Sidewalk. I don't think it's safe. I mean, they found a body there. I think it was a murder. But I never thought the shelter was the problem. I support the shelter. I support the shelter, and I think it's really part of the solution. The problem is uncontrolled homeless encampments that are springing up all around my community, causing crime and pollution. That taints the shelter. Where are you going to put the next one? If you let this one become the magnet or the Center for Homeless Encampments. And if applying for an encampment grant, I mean, maybe they are part of the problem, I don't know. I need to find out more. So what I want to do is I want to give you my card, and when you call me, I want to come visit.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to talk.
Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, council members, Madam Mayor. Really want to just express some gratitude to BACS, sitting over here and thinking about as a neighbor, you know, when Councilmember McShane was bringing up what have you done in the outreach with the neighbors. I consider myself a neighbor because I live in the Hilltop Terrace area, which is right next to Laurel Heights, which is right across the street from the center. And so just imagining, you know, the importance of the narrative and what that's going to take, you know, just that piece alone is work, apart from everything else that everybody here is involved in. Just giving it up to the council here, you know, City of Salinas has taken up the burden around homelessness in the county from what it's the perception that I, as a resident, have received. And so, as I'm thinking, wow, the BACS here, how it's worked out to a certain degree, right? Because the residents of Creek Ridge, I know what you're talking about. I jog through those trails myself, and you can see it, you can smell it, it's sad, right? And then the rest of our neighbors, I mean, it's so palpable, the level of fear. It's that narrative. And so, I'm imagining, a BACS center, Pacific Grove, Pebble Beach, Carmel, But here in Salinas, with the county of Monterey, I put my support around this city council right here, right now, to make an effort and call out our most powerful and our most, the ones that have the most sway in making stuff happen, because this is what we're feeling. This is the example, and I know our neighbors, our neighborhood is feeling the impact of it, right? Regardless of how positive it is, it's so overwhelming. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome.
West White, Salinas, Monterey County Home Machine. The BACS, this program is fantastic. It's well needed, obviously. To think about the numbers though, and how we're dealing with people, we have 100 people in, we have a 200-person wait list, we have about 1,300 people outside. We're dealing with one set of people one way, and we're dealing with another set of people a holistically different way. And that open discrimination, I think, is part of it. If we have running water, electricity, 400 square feet in a tent, we can make it in little apartment-style complexes, and people could build them up to code. Paying for their own resources just to have a place to be. And then that could show, that they're ready for housing. Because we already know there's no capacity put anywhere anyway. We got 23 people, that's a potential, that's a projection, that'd be half of the list. We were talking about 4 to 6 months, and like you already know, it's already been that long. So this is going to end up being permanent housing. We're closing down the Goodnight Inn and driving people to Marina now. Supposedly we have hotels coming in. I don't know how that's happening. So what are we really doing? How are we actually going to put people in the housing? And I think actually relating to people again and thinking about including them in the conversation, not just talking at them and what's perceived by the city for their legal reasons rather than holistically as a community. Because if we're not including the people that we're affecting, then it's already wrong. It needs to be trying to scaffold these people and running water, electricity. If it's in a household, we need it. And folks have been supplying it for themselves, but then the city says, no, you can't have it. You can't have generators. You can't have anything to be functional. And how you get a job, you need electricity. We're in a virtual reality. We're not really helping people if we continue sweeps. We need this, we need another 50 programs like this with the attitude of including people and scaffolding. Please stop the sweep.
Public comment, we'll come back to council for final comments. There is no action on this item, council, it's for informational purposes only. With that, I'll go to my left, Councilmember McShane.
Yes, to my good friend Chago, and his mention of the city taking up the burden of homelessness, I would definitely say that's a true statement. When I came on council nearly 12 years ago, homelessness, I think I can confidently say it wasn't even on the radar. I mean, it was nowhere near what the issue is today. There's realignment and other reasons for that. And so to that extent, I think we've done a terrific job. We really have. We've learned and evolved. We've started to focus on things like housing first, wraparound services. You know, we've started to get very familiar with the different structures and types of shelters as to whether or not they're high wall or low wall and so forth. So that's all good. But I want to remind my colleagues that this is a county responsibility. It really is. It's shared. I don't want to deny that. But by statute, most incorporated cities, chartered cities, it shouldn't be something we're paying a bill on. And it really bothers me because I feel like while the Share Center is a county city, shared responsibility, I really feel like we carry the torch. And maybe the county will say that they carry the torch, and it goes back to dogs and cats sleeping together and whatever else. But I know that the governor, right, snakes. The governor has a high priority on this, as does the legislature. Our legislature is flush with cash. So I do hope sometime in the near future, maybe some of them that has the time will be able to represent the council to the state legislature. I don't know, we haven't heard from, I think we have a legislative committee. I don't know who's on it, it's met. We have lobbyists, I think we're paying somebody. But I think for a time such as this, when I know that the state's going to have, what are they predicting? It's like a $60 billion surplus. I mean, the state is flush with money. Whatever we're paying our lobbyists, we should triple his per diem or his contract and get him cracking so that Salinas can do better on the topic of homelessness. Because I know by statute there's a greater authority within the county and the state to address the issue. To Nicole, I was just saying to Anthony, your responsiveness, you're getting back to me with referral, just thank you. Thanks for picking up, being available. I've heard good things about your management, your commitment, and I think this is working. A few thoughts. I would get out into the community. The First United Methodist Church is probably a good example. I spent the last weekend with Chris. Chris is the head of security at the First United Methodist Church. He's also homeless. And he told me a little bit about his job. And, he is a good neighbor. Some of the folks that were really grouchy, different times associated with the activities of First United Methodist Church, he's really helped to improve that. So I don't know whether it's a client or one of your staff. I mean, Chris literally went door to door, knocked. They have the bucket brigade. I mean, the Share Center is kind of out on an island, but it might be worth heading out, going to the Creek Bridge Shopping Center, knocking on the doors of some of those businesses, handing out brochures. Hey, here's my business card. If something comes up, let me know. We want to be a good neighbor. Because I think to Chago's point, there could be some spillover as to the reputation. And the last thing I think this council or any of us want is, for homeless to be the enemy. We're all in this together. We're all equal residents. We gotta get through this together. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Councilmember Rocha, final comments?
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you once again for your presentation and for your work. I also want to thank Ms. Shield and Mr. Richardson here for attending the meeting. I had several conversations with Robert Roach on the issue, and he repeatedly mentioned to me, I was not opposed to the shelter. I'm just frustrated with the amount of encampments. And Ms. Shield today brought up that additional concern. And to that, I would say that at the beginning, we're actually in the staff report on page 2, there's a paragraph that stands out to me, and it says, since the opening of the Share Center, they have been consistently full, sheltering at least 100 individuals while waiting for a list of approximately 200 people who are waiting for services. And so I think really the answer here, honestly, is we need to build more Share Centers throughout the city. And in order for the housing first model to work, we need to expand our number of affordable housing units. And I'm talking about deed restricted, low income and very low income units. Because the reality is we can have case employment coordinators, employment placement coordinators, but the reality is if you get a job getting paid $15 to $18, $19 an hour, trying to get even a one-bedroom apartment, you're looking at getting 70 to 90% of your income just to pay the rent, and all it takes is one medical bill, one rent increase, one destabilizing fact in your life to drive you back into being unhoused. And so I think that that's something we really have to discuss, is that the answer to addressing homelessness is housing. And so I appreciate you being here and sharing the great work you're doing. I think really, honestly, it falls back on us to work with our county partners to build our housing stock, to build our number of shelters available, and work with our regional partners. It is not just a Salinas Valley issue. In my opinion, I would also point to the fact that there is the Monterey Peninsula, which Wyatt is now pursuing a project on people. The reality is, the Monterey Peninsula in many ways, I know in here, is the driving factor in many ways behind economic inequality in our area. When you're paying low wages, starvation wages, you need to be responsible for the housing to be built in the county. And so we need to engage all of our partners and everyone to get a part on this issue. And I would just also add that I become really concerned with the language that's being used around the issue of homelessness. And I fear that if we as elected officials are not intentional with the words that we use, we are contributing to an increase in hostility towards our unhoused neighbors. And that's something that we're going to be responsible for if we don't use appropriate language. What I mean by that is, when we're talking to our constituents, let's not diminish the success of the Share Center. Let's highlight the success and say, I hear your frustrations, let's work together towards expanding the number of Share Centers, expanding the number of housing units. And I think that's all I'm contributing. So thank you for being here today.
Councilwoman Jordan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too would like to thank you for your hard work, especially Nicole and your staff. And I want to thank Megan too, because without you spearheading all of our efforts, we would not be where we are today with homelessness and our unhoused community. I visualize Share Centers across the county to address homelessness. And I think that this is a great model and that that's a great thing to aspire for. I will say that I don't believe that the shelter has had a negative impact on the neighborhood. We have had a large homeless population in this area, and especially behind Safeway for years. Unfortunately, more of our community is becoming homeless, and as Megan stated, as people are moved from one area, they've got to find a place to go, and this just happens to be the area that they're going to right now. I was very happy to hear you mention services for the aging community, because I think that we find ourselves with a rising number of aging people due to rising costs of medications, medical treatment, and housing. I urge us to not forget about this subset of our community. These are the people who led this community. They fought for our freedoms, they raised us, they built our economy. They are also the last people to ask for help and the easiest to forget. So let's make sure that none of them get forgotten when we're doing these programs.
Thank you. Councilmember Gonzalez, final comments.
You know, I just want to thank everyone for their presentation, for your candor, for your honesty. It's clear to hear that there is a common vision amongst this setting. And this is an issue that is multifaceted. Homelessness today isn't homelessness 5 years ago, 10 years ago. this pandemic turned every single aspect of the world upside down, truly. And my thinking is, as the problem evolves, so should the solutions, so should the approaches. I want there to be intentionality and humanity in our outreach when we work with unsheltered residents. To me, that does not preclude having a clean neighborhood. You can be humane, you can offer services, you can offer resources, and want clean parks, clean neighborhoods. I've done the walkthroughs myself through the Tibet Park. Walked from behind Safeway to Laurel Heights. I've been walking that area since I was a kid. There was creeks at certain points in time. And it does deeply sadden me to now see drug revenue, needles, spoons. There is a hurt and a need here, and I believe that you two and everyone else involved in this organization is working in earnest to help address it. And I agree with Councilmember McShane in saying that we need to call upon our county counterparts to make sure that this collaboration and this collective approach continues. I'd like to see more of it. We know that there is funding allocated. I would really like to see that trickle down. Salinas is the largest locality in the county, right? And my fear is that this larger phenomenon of unsheltered residents coming in from the peninsula into the city of Salinas is now happening within the city of Salinas. Once in Chinatown, now in pockets in Laurel Heights, and last this addressed in Creek Bridge. This is where we shift our approach as a legislative body from reactive to proactive. And I commend your efforts, and I'm very excited to see more. Thank you.
Councilmember Barrera, 5 comments.
Thank you for that awesome presentation. We are going in the right direction. Mr. Kerrigan, on another note, and right here we do have some real partners that are addressing this issue that we have. I want to say a few things that maybe you'd be in disagreement with. We live in a very expensive part of the world. That's just point. I mean, it's expensive to live. We live under in a good year, maybe a $4 billion, maybe to a $7 billion agriculture industry. Beautiful. I mean, our product from Salinas Valley goes all over the world, all over the world. But the thing is, it also attracts poverty folks that are looking for a better life, all the way from El Salvador, Nicaragua. Usually you just have Mexicans here. Now you're having from all the way from Central America that will bring in workers. And it's hard to live here. You know, I live on Fairhaven Street, and I love Alisal. John Steinbeck writes about my neighborhood. That's why I tell a lot of kids, be proud of where you live. Gloucester Park. I'm very proud of where I live. But I went down my street just randomly talking to my neighbors just from Williams Road to Todd Street. Out of all those homes there, there's only 3 homes that only one family lives in. The rest are they're renting rooms, they're renting garages. That's what it is. But you know what? At 4 or 5 in the morning, you hear all these vehicles or you hear honking. Everybody's getting up to go to work. Hard-working people. They're not looking for charity or anything. They go out there and work, but they can't afford even a studio. And that's what we live in. Today, Mr. Kerrigan, I saw something valuable. Mr. Roach, the gentleman that was over there and he came to speak, he had sent us really strong emails, very upset. A homeowner for almost 30 years in Creek Bridge, very proud of his neighborhood. He's asking his council, what is happening to our neighborhood? What is happening to our city? Today I saw the same gentleman say, I support the Share Center. Here's my card. If I can be of help, I'm there. But we need to do something about our neighborhood. We have a big task, Mr. Kerrigan. And I know we've been talking about, I know there's 3 electeds out here. I know 2 of us, we've been trying to get on the county for I don't know how long, and you can't do it. we got one more that may, hopefully they'll remember the city of Salinas, if they make it. And that's where it's gonna take team effort. You know, this in-kind doesn't cut it. But you know what's been happening with the county and the city, and I'm gonna stop with my ranting here. The county says, no, that's your responsibility, the city says, no, that's yours, and we never get anywhere, and we're serving the same family. I think what we really need to do is get some serious conversations and say, what am I responsible for? Do I have mental health? Do I have social services? Am I the one that does the cleanup? What is my duty here? And you know, when you bring that team to the table, just like you brought a team together, that's when you're successful. When politicians can come together and really be sincere and say, you know what, we're going to take care of my responsibility, you take care of yours, and guess what's going to happen? We're going to serve the community. But I do ride my bicycle down where the councilwoman said, and I get nervous going out there myself. It's a beautiful sight, beautiful area, but a scary place. And I can just imagine a mom wanting to walk their little child, or even a father wanting to walk his family. It gets scary. So we do need to, it needs our attention. Not next year, but sometime soon. Thank you.
Councilmember Sonia, final comments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you guys for being here. We really appreciate it. Really great, hard-working folks. And I still remember when we were voting on Bay Area, and to see now where this program has come. And that's why my questioning was more specific to, you guys have been doing this in other communities for some time. How are we looking? So I'm very glad to hear that we have been able to rapidly house 22 families or individuals. So I'm glad about that. I know there's a lot of work ahead of us. I think you guys are completely up for the task. And from the sounds of it, this body does fully support the work that you guys do. So thank you for that. One of my things that I think about is with making sure that we are able to let folks know how they can call in. And even for me, that was one of the first times hearing that. I mean, you're talking about a phone right over the phone. That's very powerful. Knowing that, again, when you guys are talking about removing those barriers, hey, let me make an appointment for you, come into the office on X day, that may be, in a way, as a barrier. Taking that phone call over the phone, it really speaks to when you guys say you guys are willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that that 10 or 15-minute phone call, you can get one more person on that list. And to be able to know that person that's on that list doesn't just come off of the list and, hey, you know what, we called you 3 times, you're off of it, but then you're able to put them back on the list. Again, that just speaks volumes to the out-of-the-box thinking, the regular same old way of doing things. And I believe that that's what we were hearing when it is that we chose for you folks to be the operator. So again, thank you again for that. And I look forward to again, having more reports. I don't know if that's going to be every 6 months. I don't know if that's going to be every year, but I know that knowing how we can further support these efforts is going to be something that's very, very important for us. So again, thank you so much for being here today.
I just want to acknowledge a couple of points. You know, you've been open essentially 7 months and have managed to house 23 individuals. I'll share a previous, as a councilwoman, I remember sitting down with one of the service providers who showed me their PowerPoint and acknowledged that over a period of 3 years they had housed 9 people. So with the level of success in the Leave Me Home, in the Housing First initiative, I agree with Councilmember Rocha that that's really the way to get people into transitional and then permanent housing. I would just acknowledge, I think the low barrier model has been a really successful thing in terms of being able, families with pets, that's a very real thing. And for you to welcome them with open arms and allow them to be part of the Share Center, I think has added to that success. I do want to just acknowledge that there are other cities that are currently working on homelessness through Project Home Key. Pacific Grove and King City both have approved and are moving forward with that. So in alignment with making sure that other cities, there are 12 cities in Monterey County, other cities are starting to move in that direction. We're clearly trailblazing, and I would encourage you as you speak to your fellow colleagues in other cities, and whatever respective boards you sit on, we have some level of success, and that can be shown through our Share Center. And so recognizing and understanding that there should be more Share Centers in Monterey County, we're certainly thrilled that you are the first one here and that we get to welcome you here. So you're doing great work, and thank you for all you do. With that, we'll deem this report received.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the time.
Okay.